It didn't. No, it's not.
It's not cast up there, huh?
I can't remember what's what. They're all in the wrong rooms.
Uh-oh.
5.
Are you on staff here? Or just
not on
no?
staff here.
Not on staff?
They bring me in for these because it's fun.
That's awesome.
All right, there we go. All right.
Aha!
That's you.
It's on. That's us. Should be good.
Except
And you
it's
can
doing a mirroring instead of. There we go. That's how we want it to be.
Aha.
And then
Gotcha.
you are good to go.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Excellent. It's already
That's our
recording,
time.
so don't say anything you remember.
I appreciate that.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Start telling that people right before they.
that's right. Yeah, this is recording. Hello, come on in. Our notes here or out there. What do we got here? This is not us. Aha. Come on. Okay, you got one. That's great. Yes, there's one right by here. You can have one, that one right there. Yep. Hey man, it's been great.
Yeah, I think probably best for you to just kind of lead through those
Yeah.
points as they're developed and in your head, and I'll just kind of
Right.
add in stuff
Right.
where I can.
You do that, add your stories, add things, and particularly, like I'll talk, mine is in the church planting phase, and so where you would be particularly beneficial is in coming into an established church, in a culture that's already established and all that, and so how you're thinking about these things and going about it, or hopeful, to go about it, so building a pipeline, but
So you two fellas leading us?
we are, yes, we are.
Blair.
I'm Blair. What's your name?
Ken.
Ken?
Yeah.
Great to meet you, Ken. Where are you from?
Cade.
Not far away from here, actually. Sorry.
Okay.
Cade.
Cade?
Yes, sir.
Cade.
Yeah.
Like that. Where are you from? Blair?
Texas. We're both from Texas.
Same?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes,
A little bit of a
indeed.
drive?
We flew in, but it would have been a monster of a drive to get up here, that's for sure.
Would have been, yes. What part of Texas?
I'm in New Braunfels.
And
Yeah.
I met you yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm from Houston.
Houston. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I was actually born in Webster.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
And where are you at now?
Decatur.
Decatur, Illinois.
That's right.
So I don't know.
I feel like we've met before, have
we
we?
have actually. I was at the last conference and you were teaching one of the senior trust.
Oh, yeah. You were there? That's right. Okay, I remember your face now. It's been a few months. That's right. Well,
Was
that's
that
right.
the one in San Antonio?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's right. I remember. That's true. It was good times.
Where's
Hello, guys. Come on in.
Another one?
Yeah, he signed up for all the 3 worship tracks, so he's upstairs in room 233 or something like that. So he's doing that. It's been good. This is his first GCC conference.
Okay.
So, he
Is he having
went.
a good time?
Oh yeah, he's soaking it up. He's needed this. He went just as a congregant. He went many years ago to one of the Harvest U's.
Oh, sure.
You guys remember those?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And but yeah, he hadn't been back. He recently started worship in January.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm dragging him.
Yeah. Gotta come.
I didn't need to drag him. He wanted to. So
Sure.
It's been good for him.
That's good. Do y'all have a new lead pastor? at
Yeah, it's
Katie?
me.
Yeah, you are?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, so yeah.
Because last year, right, I know Tony and all that, but that was still in transition when we were there. It's all coming back to me now, but now you're officially lead pastor. Okay,
So,
congrats, man.
It's awesome. I've been there, so this month marks 1 year officially.
As the lead pastor, okay.
That was in San Antonio,
Mhm.
kind of doing the interim thing.
Right, yeah, okay, good. It's going well? Are you guys
It
thriving?
is.
Yeah?
It is. I feel like there's a mountain of things to learn.
Sure.
To do right, and this has been really helpful as far as I've been doing like the planning the 20 years healthy.
Mm-hmm.
The other one before that about communicating with elders. And that's
Yeah.
been really good. It's
Good.
things I can take back. And
Sure.
I feel like we need to gel more as an elder board is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, yeah. So important, man.
It is.
That chemistry piece gets often overlooked and is undervalued. Obviously character is so important. Competency for the work. Are they called and qualified? Like all those things are incredibly important. But the chemistry of us fitting and the relational aspect of all that. In my own experience, which isn't extensive or anything by any means, but I feel like chemistry pieces have blown up more elder boards than any of the other things. Yeah, a guy that just doesn't quite fit, and has an agenda or can't see it or something, or has an ego, which overlaps maybe into some of the character issues as well. But man, some of that stuff is borne out, especially early on, as a guy is coming on or being vetted in the chemistry piece. And we maintain that, particularly as lead pastors. We maintain that. Like we are stewarded with building and maintaining that unity and that chemistry and the relational aspect. So.
And that's a concept that's actually kind of new to me. I read Dave Harvey's paper,
Mm-hmm.
kind of the roles within the elder board.
Sure.
And that's where I first kind of keyed into the pastor's role as building the unity and the health of the board. So
Yeah.
figure out.
Yeah. Yeah. Plurality principle is huge. The book that he wrote. And would also encourage, if you haven't, Dave did a series of 4 training videos. This was like during COVID or something we did those.
Oh, yeah.
They're like 90-minute Zoom calls that were super helpful, that came with some like worksheets and things afterwards, the discussion questions. And we did those. It was like 2 different ones. There was like one he did, like it's like season 1 and 2, and then season 2, 1 and 2. But they all flow. And really it's born out of the book, Plurality Principle, those concepts. But they were so helpful for us in that, and just asking the questions and clarifying roles, things that maybe we even take for granted or we assume is just like valued or understood amongst the elder board about what our role is and how we operate and how we function. And so those were really helpful. And they're available on the GCC Learning Center.
The learning center?
Yeah, yeah. And so they're all on there. So we did it with our elder, and even as we've added or are, and adding other elders, we have them watch it and go through it because they're just really, really helpful. Really helpful. It's the plurality training 1, 2, 3, and 4, I think is what they're called now, or something like that. But yeah.
That's good. That's good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. It's very helpful. We'll get started in a few more minutes. Everybody coming for lunch, things. So we'll give it a few more minutes.
What time is it scheduled?
1:30. Yeah. So, which
Quite a few signed up.
40 plus, yeah. I think that with everything going late, so as long as we're done by 2:45. Matthew. Hello, good sir. You don't have your thing on, huh? You're just not your.
Oh, it's on.
Oh, it's just underneath. Yeah,
It's
you're
harder
hidden.
it's harder to adjust when it's under there.
Sure,
though.
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Man, bro. Yeah. Have
was-
greater sympathy.
It plagued me when I was in 7th grade. I was very conscious of it. I was
Yeah.
like, It's terrible. As a
Yeah.
seventh grader's trying to identify it. But as an adult, I'm like, man.
Yeah, whatever. Right. Don't care about that stuff much anymore. At least not as we should, but. Did everybody get notes as you're coming in or see that they were there? Let me grab some, make sure everybody's got them. You need one? You're very welcome. You've got one. Okay, excuse me. Did y'all get notes?
I got one here.
You got
but
one.
I think my buddy needs one.
You need one. All right.
Thank you.
There you go. Oh, no. I don't have any in here. There might be some pens over there.
I'm gonna use my phone and we're good.
There you go.
So if I'm on my phone, it's not the one
You're just,
checking my whatever.
yeah, you're on socials.
Jerry.
There you go, Stephanos. How are you?
But I'm glad.
Guys, we're going to give it just a few more minutes for everybody to get back from lunch and all that. So thanks for just being patient, but also being on time, y'all. Thank you. Yeah, I think, right, the session went late. We got started in the sessions, and so everything's just kind of backed up. I'm sure we've overwhelmed all the local restaurants and things, and so.
Actually, we went to the grocery store, got some ham and cheese, made sandwiches, went back to the place.
Yeah,
We were not.
so you avoided all of it, yeah. Yeah. We just drove, we went like just a mile, like 6 blocks over that way to kind of get out from the general vicinity, and it was fine over there, and we were able to walk in, but all the, little places within close proximity were overflowing. Yeah, I'm sure that's.
We went to Montana's last night,
Mm-hmm.
and there was one waitress.
Yeah.
And we tried to be very gracious to her, accommodating.
Yeah.
Just bring me whatever you want.
Yeah.
Just bring me food, however long it takes. Whatever you want. We'll eat it.
That's right. As long as it's cooked, well, that's great. That's great. So, who's come from the farthest distance? Anybody local? Where you?
About an hour and a half.
About an hour and a half. That's yeah.
Is that the furthest
Traveled
so
far?
far? So far, that's the furthest.
That's the furthest, right?
So far.
Although I guess I asked that question, but I also know where Brother Stephanos is from Athens. Yeah. So anybody farther than Athens, Greece? Yeah.
I think
Not quite
10
that-
minutes away, I don't think that really
10 minutes.
qualifies.
That's the closest. Yeah. You're closest. That's right.
Across the
And you're close by? Where are you from?
Brantford,
Brantford. Okay, so not far. Not far.
from mid-Missouri,
In mid-Missouri? Yeah. Okay. Where at?
Lake of the Ozarks.
Right on. At
Not the hillbilly part.
not the hill. No, Lake of the Ozarks is not hillbilly part. Yeah. Yeah. That's a.
I'm telling everyone I met a hillbilly.
That's right. No, it's very nice there. Man, I just spoke to a pastor there a few months ago. Probably. Are you with a church that's new to the GCC? Riverview Baptist, yeah. Yes. Yeah. I just spoke to him on the phone a few months, right as you guys were entering in.
But he was moving, he had issues with his house.
Oh,
and
no.
lost his passport.
Oh no,
He would be here.
that's tragic.
Oh, yeah.
That's tragic. But
I don't know that he did it on purpose. I need to follow up.
that's right. Just happened to lose it. Well, hopefully not.
I get back home, he shows up with that.
That's right. I found it. Imagine that. That's right. That's right. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? We may have some others trickling in, so as they do, we'll heckle them a little bit and make mean faces. I'm teasing. We won't do that. But my name is Blair Cushman, lead pastor at Redemption Bible Church down in Central Texas, the city of New Braunfels, and we planted back in 2017. Got got on the ground there in 2016, planted in 2017, and God's just been very kind to us. We had our 6-year anniversary a few weeks ago, and so that was just a joy to celebrate in that. Married to Erin. I typically call her sweetheart, but her name's Erin, so if you ever get to meet her, you should probably call her Erin. But and got a handful of kids, and but they're all back home. They didn't make the jump across the border with us. So grew up in Wisconsin originally, so we used to come up into Canada to go fishing and all that. But it's a joy to be here. Joy to explore this topic with y'all. This is my friend and colleague Cade. Cade was with us at Redemption from the early days in planting. He and his wife Corey are part of our core group, and now we just had the opportunity to send him over to the Houston area and to let you. Why don't you tell him what you do over there and all that stuff? So
they gave me a handheld mic, right?
That's right.
I'm not getting ready to sing or anything like
That's
that.
right.
So don't-
He sings solos. Yeah,
It's
he's a,
for that camera right back there.
That's
so
right.
We can record everything. But yeah, so I'm the lead pastor in Houston now at Vertical Life Church, and like Blair told you, part of why I'm here and a perspective that I bring is someone that came in as a congregant member in a phase where a church was being launched and in core group, kind of grew up through that, was raised up as an elder, trained up, seminary, all stuff, and then sent out to now go pastor another church, who, when I got there, just a few weeks in, was in the process of planting another church, where that lead pastor happens to be sitting right here. This is Hill City Church in Magnolia, Texas, which is just up the road from Vertical Life in Houston.
Yeah.
And so kind of getting to see lots of church planting
Right.
and a church planted along the way.
Right.
And so glad to be here and to be part of this session.
That's right. So, it's our topic, as you can see on here, and I'm sure you signed up for this, really that we want to explore is how within our elder teams, within our plurality, do we foster, do we cultivate, do we create a mindset of sending, right? Of raising up, of discipling, but then also sending out, whether they're church planters or core groups or whatever it might be. And honestly, even as I was asked to lead this workshop, and then just in the last workshop was with Crawford Laritz and just soaking in all that Crawford had to say, earlier. And then, I'm sure you were all there last night as well. I'm thinking like, man, we need to be learning from him. We're all coming. This is just the clown show. What do I have to offer? We're just 6 years into this. That brother's 60 years into this. We need to be learning these things from him. And so what Kate and I have to talk about really is just stuff that we have done from the get-go. And so, like I said, we're just 6 years in, and all by the grace of God, really. And as our church, like Kate was talking about, we planted a church there in South Austin. They just celebrated their 1-year anniversary and had him as a resident, and so we're going to tell just some stories along the way of what our church, even in this young phase, we've gotten to be a part of. But then also because Cade was in there building this with me as elders at Redemption, but now also Cade brings a new perspective of also seeing this from the early days when you're getting to build something from the ground up, building a culture versus now even stepping into an existing culture and helping to shape and really redirect existing culture to be one more of multiplication and sending and all that. So that's really our aim in our session, is just kind of talk through how we've gone about that, how we think about it. Hopefully you got your notes as you came in here. But as we go, let me just say this up top. If you have specific questions on these things, some of the principles even that you see written down here, you might be like, yeah, duh, this is just basic leadership principles. This is just culture creating principles. Yeah, that's really what it is. And so we want to talk just about it, share some stories, but then also feel free, raise your hand, throw your Bible, well, maybe not that, but throw some notes or something to get our attention. And I would love to take those your questions as we go, but we'll also try to leave a little bit of time at the end as well if you have some big questions. So I want this to just be really helpful, really practical, understanding that you are probably at different places, knowing Matt's a church planter, and so thinking, even in core group phase of what this looks like, but then you in your churches are, in various places and maybe with various levels of influence and responsibility there, and so we want to try to be as helpful as we can. So we all know where we're going. We have a clear pathway before us. One of the things that I wanted to just begin with was a why, really. Isn't that true?
Yeah. I mean, it begs the question, like, why is this important? And we heard Dave this morning.
That's true.
Who, really got us fired up about all this stuff. But
Yeah.
Still, it's great to lay that context out of why this is so important.
Why is this right? I don't know. Can we add anything to what Dave was talking about? Y'all were in the session this morning. Dave, he really laid out the why. Why is this so important for us as a church, as we are wanting to take ground for the gospel, as we and see churches planted and healthy, particularly healthy churches planted. And so I think this is the case. The connection to the Great Commission, the connection to our mission, is pretty obvious, right? But here's really where we want to hone in on this session is, okay, we get that, but how that is laid out and how our churches go about that really starts within our elder plurality, right? As elders, and you maybe you've heard this before. This is just this isn't in your notes or anything like that. But as elders, from the Lord, you could summarize the role and responsibility of elders in 4 categories that start with D. Elders are responsible for the doctrine of the church, right? Doctrinal purity, biblical teaching in all of our ministries. Like as elders, they're to guard the deposit, right? And so that's part of what we do. We lead the discipleship of our church, making and maturing and multiplying disciples. We also oversee the discipline of the church, as there are members who are actively sinning and turning away from the Lord. It is part of our job in that to lead the process of calling them back in with hopeful reconciliation, with hopeful restoration, and often or sometimes, maybe not often, sometimes it leads to that point where they're put out of church, but that's part of the elders. But the fourth one is also the direction of the church, right? Elders lead the direction, and as Dave was encouraging us this morning about dreaming, and so there needs to be times for dreaming in elder teams. And Cade knows how I'm a dreamer. Anyways, sometimes
I got dreams of my own. I keep talking to him about Bastrop. We need to
That's
plant
right.
a church in
That's
Bastrop,
right.
Texas.
That's right. Now where they're at in Houston. So in Texas, if you're familiar with the geography, we have several churches kind of right in the center on the I-35 corridor from Austin to San Antonio. And we're kind of right in the center where we're at in New Braunfels. And so Austin and San Antonio really are suburbs of New Braunfels, not the other way around. But it's locals will fight for that. That's right. But then you have Houston and now Magnolia that are kind of over here. And so as we're even thinking strategically, like, how do we close that gap? In the cities in between Austin and Houston and other communities. And so as Cade talks about Bastrop, there's we have dreams and things like this. But even beyond that, elders are the dreamers, are the ones that set the direction through the decisions that we make, right? Through discerning God's will, through the doctrine, through the clarity that we're seeking from the Lord, we set the direction. And so, if you want to establish a culture of multiplication, of raising up and sending out, that has to start in the elder room. It has to be a dream, a vision, and also a strategy of the elders. These are things that have to be on every agenda, right? And what makes it onto the agenda is ultimately how we lead out of it. And so even in our own meetings, those 4 Ds that I just laid out, every single meeting, our agenda items are listed under those Ds. Is this a doctrinal issue, a direction issue, discipleship, discipline? If it falls outside of that, it's not an elder issue. It doesn't make it into our meetings. But this idea of multiplication really is. We want to be this. we want to be this type of church. And so, are you all familiar with Dave Harvey's book, The Plurality Principle? Have you read that? Yeah, I see some enthusiastic head nodding. Welcome, Micah. Come on in. That's a phenomenal book. And if you have not read that or are unfamiliar with it, be sure, go on Amazon right now, get it sent to your house, start reading it with your elder teams, because it really lays out some of this. But also he just wrote another book, and it's been referenced, Stronger Together, and there's some chapters in there as well that talk about multiplication and things that are super, super helpful. Those are foundational books that guide your elder plurality. But in the same way that the health of the plurality sets the health of your of your church, so too the direction of your elder team sets the direction of your church. And so multiplication, all this to say, just again, multiplication, this mindset, if we're going to build a pipeline for making and sending planters and all that, that has to become a passion and a direction that exists in the elder team. And so here's just really then, as we think about this, why is this important? Well, we want to be growing. We can't, we have to be multiplying out. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen, right? The case, this is something that Dave was talking about there. But we just had this in our welcome area when you come into our church at Redemption. We have live plants. I'm also a son of a greenhouse and grandson of a greenhouse owners in Belmont, Wisconsin. But there's just lots of theology that comes out of horticulture, isn't there? Jesus used a lot of parables and from horticulture and things. But at our church, we have live plants in the entry. And that's just a conviction of mine. Fake plants mean fake people. Live plants, real people, right? And yeah. But that means somebody has to take care of them, right? Because if somebody doesn't, if you have dead plants as people are walking in, that just sets a subconscious tone for everybody else. So if that's not your, if you don't have a green thumb, then that's why we have a phenomenal woman in our church, Janine, who takes care of all that. She loves it. It's her passion. I've cast the vision for it, and she keeps us green and beautiful outside and inside. But what I'm bringing up is we had this gnarly plant called a Z plant. You all familiar with this? I mean, it's big and branches coming off of it, and they're even kind of spiky, all that. An indoor plant. Great plant too, because it doesn't need hardly any sunlight and all that. But it is just thriving right next to our coffee bar, mostly because I think as people empty their coffee grounds and all that, it was just growing big and huge, and it needed to be transplanted. And so she and another woman came in and opened it up. And when they pulled that pot off, down there in the roots, it was all root bound, and it smelled so bad. Part of it, I think, is the coffee with creamer and all that had been dumped in there over the last, years or whatever. It's just kind of festering in there. But that's what can happen in our churches if we're not multiplying. On the outside, it's big, it's green, it's leafy, but it's root bound and maybe even stinking. And so what did we need to do? They came in and they actually had to take a machete and chop through the roots. But now we have 12 of those plants around our church. It's multiplying, And from the point I'm trying to make is if that hadn't been multiplied, if it hadn't been split up, before long, that plant that looked like it was beautiful on the outside would have very quickly actually started to die because the roots had no soil in which to grow, and there was this decay that was starting to form in there. And so, praise God, they got in there and multiplied it. The same can be true in our churches. We need to be thinking about these things so that even if on the outside we've got lots of people coming, it's green, it looks healthy and growing, but as we start to get below the surface and we look, discipleship actually isn't happening. There's no roots. There's stuff that is being missed here, and actually maybe as we get down, there's some decay in our small groups or amongst the leaders, and God's prescription for that is sometimes to then bring a big machete, hopefully not to chop us up, but his prescription is to multiply. And so we as elders, that's our role. That's what we need to do, is to multiply out. And so how do we go about that? So that's the why, but really we're here to talk about how. We We talk about how Cade was with me in this. We just learned it along the way, tried to figure this out. And here's, let's just start with this stuff. We'll kind of work our way through. Here's how we went about it at Redemption. And then, again, Cade, speak into this. Cade's good at telling me to be quiet. And so you add in what you're thinking too. But here's really how. We have the vision. We understand the necessity for this. And here's really where this begins. It begins with just a commitment to praying. Like, oh man, like, do we even need to say that? You know, it's like, do we need to have a session on integrity? You know, do we need to have sessions on humility? But no, you have to start by praying these things. My friend John Mollahan, pastor in the GCC, he quotes this all the time, but nothing of eternal significance happens apart from prayer. That's not a quote unique to him. I don't know where it originates. I just hear him say it all the time, and so I just attribute it to him and ask him where that actually came from. But nothing of eternal significance happens apart from prayer. Planting churches, raising up, sending out planters, raising up, sending out leaders into new churches, into new core groups, is ministry of eternal significance, and that can't happen by prayer. One of the ways that the very specific prayers that we started praying early on in our days at Redemption was this, and I just heard this even through GCC guys, is God, make us a worshiping and sending church. Make us a worshiping and sending church. That's who we've wanted to be, just very clear as we've set the vision, as we've prayed as elders, as we pray in our services. God, make us a worshiping and sending church. The worship is just the vertical aspect, right? Giving God the glory. That's part of our heritage as a network of vertical worship, all things done to the glory of God. And as we commit ourselves to being a worshiping church, like the builder's square, if you get the vertical right, then the horizontal gets right. And what that just results in is sending. Of sending out your best, of sending and multiplying people out. And when you commit to praying this, and you praying it in your services, as you're praying it personally, in your time with the Lord as elders, at your member meetings, or however you work, as you give out elder updates and things, as you pray this, God, make us a worshiping and sending church. Essentially, you're praying your mission statement. I don't know how you word it at your church. Ours is very simple, glorifying God through the fulfillment of the Great Commission. We exist as a church to glorify God by making, maturing, and multiplying disciples. Said another way, make us a worshiping and sending church. And God has seen fit to answer that over and over and over from the earliest days, even as a young church, even when it made no sense at 3 years old, when we were just moving into a lease space out of our own, like we were meeting in an elementary school, and now here we're committed to taking on a church planting resident and sending him and our number 2 worship leader. It just, like, we didn't have much money, we didn't have any experience.
It's kind of like when you're getting ready to have a baby, right? When you find out that you're pregnant for the first time, and most dads have that same response of, I don't know if we're ready for this right now, and the fact of the matter, what all of us tell those guys, is you never really feel that way.
Yeah.
Right? But it doesn't mean that you're not.
Right.
And you can trust the Lord in these things, and so whatever situation you're in, however young or old the church may be, the timing of it, in that regard, where you're trying to wait until you've achieved this certain thing before you're ready to plant, you just kind of have to get that sort of thinking out of your mind, right? And you have to look at other markers that we're going to talk about in order to be ready. But one of the things that I wanted to add on about prayer that's kind of from my perspective as a guy that has seen this at sort of 3 different levels, and now at this level I'm at, where I've moved into a church that has an already existing plurality and has already sent kind of at the same time that I got there. We're assuming a couple of things here. One is that you're already sold on church planting, right? You're in this room, you're at this session, so I'm assuming you're on board with that. And we're assuming that you're in a plurality of elders. But what if you're in a situation where maybe the elders aren't, or have a different opinion or something like that? This is another place where prayer comes in big time.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna pray that God will change those hearts and get everybody aligned, because you have to be together in unity on these things. And if you're gonna build this culture that Blair's talking about here, that is just such a core foundational thing, is the unity of the plurality and what some of these things mean and how we're gonna go about doing it. So don't forget that in your prayer. If you have one of those edgy guys that's like maybe on board, not on board kind of thing, seek the Lord in that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as elders, what's our primary tasks? What are we to be devoted to? You know, Acts 6 lays it out very succinctly for us. Devoted to prayer, the ministry of the word, and the equipping of the saints for the work of the ministry. I mean, that's essentially it. Yeah. And so we need to be praying for not only these things, but for our elders, for the unity of our elders. Early on in our days, I committed to the last Tuesday of the month to fast and pray for our elders. Still continue, you know, as God adds on others. It's just the day that bring before the Lord, as you see this pattern throughout the book of Acts of the elders fasting and praying for ministry for one another to happen. And that's the place to do. It just starts by praying for this. I don't know why this isn't working, and our guy's not here. We're supposed to have this nice on the screen, and, well, it's not there. That's what I was fiddling around with, so. We don't have, we're going to have to take it with us. We don't have it on the screen here. But it starts by praying. Does that make sense? You know, this is what we're devoted to do. It's praying our mission statement, praying and asking God to do this, because if he doesn't do it, then it's not going to happen, right? It's if you want this to happen, the making and sending of planters and planting of churches, then you have to pray. But here's the second thing that happens. Not only is it then just praying and asking God, you have to lead through and establish some cultural values. That's what elders do, right? The directional piece. We lead the church through our praying, through our teaching, through our presence, through our shepherding of the church. And so there are really two commitments or two convictions that come from the scriptures that I would commend to you. And we have to be initiating leadership through these things. Okay, and here's just another principle that really defines us. As elders, we lead through things, we don't deal with things, right? We lead through issues, we lead through ministry, we don't just deal with people's problems, right? We don't deal with, cultural trends. We lead our people through. We lead through sensitively, humbly, obviously, but there are two really commitments. If you're going to establish this kind of culture, and let me just give them to you. We have to have a commitment to giving people a shot. Okay? A commitment to giving people a shot. 1 Timothy 4, right? As Paul is talking to Timothy, he says, "Let no one look down on you because you are young." Right? Now, was Timothy like a kid at that point? He was probably about 30 years oldish or so, But rather, he was to do what? He was to, you familiar with this? Set an example, right? He was to set an example in godliness. And we, in our churches, we have to be willing to invest in the next generation. And I'm not necessarily talking merely of the age of a person, but where they're at in their walk with the Lord. Right? We've got a guy in our church right now who's in his mid-50s and in seminary, desiring to, for the last leg of his life to be in ministry. And trying to work with him about what that looks like, whether it's vocationally or within the context of our church. But man, I think it's super awesome that he is, even in this stage of life, desiring to be used of the Lord for the remainder of his days. And we're trying to find ways even for him to give him a shot. Okay, where do you fit? What gifts has God given to you? And he's in that stage. And then we've got young guys, in their 20s and 30s and things. But we have to be willing to give guys a shot, to give them, responsibility that matches their spiritual maturity, and allow them the opportunity to grow, whether it be in teaching or whatever it might be in kids ministry. But we have to be, living out that 2 Timothy 2:2. These things you've heard from me, and trust to others who trust others. And so that just has to be happening at every level within our church. And church planting kind of lends itself to that, because that's where you're where people are coming and you're getting to know them, and everything is new. And so you're just like, okay, hey, can you bring brownies this week? Great, I need you to bring brownies. And man, they don't just bring brownies, but they bring all the plates and things, and they're not just like, they're homemade brownies, and they're delicious, and they go above and beyond. And you start to see things in people as they rise to the challenge. Hey, could you just lead the prayer and encouragement time before the service as we come in? And so you're starting to give people little opportunities as you hand the baton forward. Became a cultural value. What's that?
I was just saying, somebody asked a question.
No, go ahead. Yep.
And that's juxtaposed against, right, the guy that comes in
Yep.
that is like, hey, I'm ready to lead your small groups, I'm ready to lead your Bible studies,
Yeah.
I'm your next church planter, and then you ask him to bring the brownies.
Oh, no.
Can't make that happen.
Yeah, no. I don't bring brownies. I don't wash dishes.
Right.
I don't do those things. But we do have to be willing to give guys a shot, to hand the baton to them and then equip them to hand the baton forward. One of our cultural values of leadership at the Redemption is exactly that. We hand the baton forward. And so as people are given ministry opportunities, they hand the baton forward. And you've probably had this where there's guys that are like, hey, I can't show up. Can you do this? Can you put out the A-frame signs on Sunday? No. That baton has been given to you. You now hand that off to somebody else. And so we've just really tried to develop these things and instill them and to lead through these cultural values at every level of our ministry. And that comes through giving guys a shot and raising up others. In the life of our church right now, 6 years in, we just went through a whole thing with our ministry team leaders. Many of them had kind of risen to a level and have grown in their spiritual maturity and responsibility. And so now they have been given additional responsibility and other things. And so we've got a whole nother wave of young leaders now leading our hospitality and leading kids ministry teams and all that, because we have this commitment to giving people a shot. Now with
Is that new wave, that next generation you're talking about?
Yes.
So age is not an issue.
Age is not really an issue there. It's just those maybe that are newer to our church as well. I was just thinking through that in our some of the new people, because here's the thing also is we're getting older, and maybe Cade can speak to this, and some of y'all whose churches are considerably older, as other people come in, maybe they're like, hey, is there a place for me to serve? Is there a place for me to have influence? Is there a place for me to grow? And so as you're raising up and sending out people as well, then these opportunities are coming and opening up for others. But
and something I would add to it as well is to really check on realistic expectations of younger guys coming in, and remember back to where you were, right? Because if you're expecting guys to come in at the exact same maturity level, the exact same theological knowledge level, ministerial experience level that you're at right now, then you can't raise up another generation.
Sure.
They're just not there yet. So you've got to check any unrealistic expectations and begin training them, and taking some ownership in that in order to raise them up so that we can send out. Right.
Yeah, because all that comes through being tested. That people aren't being given responsibility. Even these that are being raised up in our church now are all people that have been serving faithfully, week after week after week after week for a year plus. But we have this commitment to giving people a shot, to letting them grow into these spots. There's what Dave Harvey calls in his book, Stronger Together, a gritty intentionality, where everything, and here's this has to become our viewpoint, especially amongst the elders, is everything is an opportunity to equip and to disciple people. Everything is. That's where that focus of leading through, not just dealing with, everything is an opportunity to equip. Everything is an opportunity to disciple, to shepherd people. Now, not in like this manipulative, like, okay, we're always talking, we're always teaching. Like, nobody wants that. Like, okay, I'm just going to avoid you as an elder because you're just always going to be telling me what to do. Like, again, like, dial that back a little bit. But that viewpoint of like, okay, this is an opportunity to grow. Tell me what you're learning. As you're bringing me a problem or you're bringing me something. What are you learning in it? What do you think is the problem? What do you think is the solution? And as guys are rising to the challenge, then they are given additional responsibility. See, because we lead through this. That's one of the cultural conditions. We have this commitment to giving people a shot. But here's the second one. There's also needs to be a commitment to sending out our best. Dave talked about that in the service, and at every level of ministry, there just has to be this commitment to giving your best people away. Acts 13, as those church leaders are gathered there, and as they're looking to, and the Holy Spirit tells them who to send out. He's not just telling, hey, send out, these like unproven, untested, the guys that you're eager to, to not see every week. They send their best. It's Paul and Barnabas that get sent out. Yeah. And so there has to be just that commitment to sending your best. We had an issue. So when we planted our church, we had we sent out the church planter and then our number 2 worship leader. He and his wife went with them. And phenomenal young guy that had been, again, he'd been given a shot, leading capacity. And then in our, literally, the week after we commissioned them and send them, we have an issue that comes up with our worship leader that sidelined him for a lengthy season. And it would have been
easy to be like,
oh yeah, what we just did last week? Like, yeah, we can't do that. We need to be here. And we couldn't. Like that would have not have been the right move. And so it's like, all right, who's the next man up? Who here? We had just sent out our best, and that was really put to the test because we were in that. Cade was obviously still with us at that point, and it's like, what? But like, all right, Lord, this is all in your timing, and it was put to the test as we were deploying people into the mission there, and
and it's a trust issue. It's just like when we worship through giving, right? And that's something that we do every week. And when we think about, giving in the way that we do, and not giving God our leftovers, but giving Him our first fruits, giving Him our best.
Yeah.
It's the same type of trust issue when we're going to take someone,
right.
Especially when you start talking about church planting and,
right.
and worship leaders and these big things that we all need. You're going to take this guy and now send him out? Are you serious?
Right.
Yeah, because I trust the Lord.
Yeah.
And so, I'll send out my best,
right.
not my leftovers.
Right. Yeah. This was also put to the test at Redemption this last spring, and so as I shared, Cade had been with us from the very get-go, and even he and I had dreams from the early days that we were going to ride off into the sunset together. Let's keep doing ministry in New Braunfels for decades to come, and then when they either boot us out or the Lord takes us home or whatever, then we'll be done. And it just became clear over the last several months, or the early months of this year in 2023, that no, Cade was the man to go and be the new lead pastor at our church in Houston.
It was clear to him first.
Yeah, well.
But see, that's kind of what sending
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. I'd sprung it on. We were coming back from a funeral. I was like, Cade, I think you should really think about doing this, and he kind of laughed me off.
Well, let me tell this story. Because here's the way we were from a funeral in San Antonio, and he's like, hey, the situation in Houston that they're looking for a lead pastor. I'm like, yeah, I know about it. We prayed about it. I'm like, yeah, of course. He's like, I think you should, send him your stuff. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good one. And then just totally blew him off. And then when we got home, after another half an hour, and he's getting out of the truck, and he's like, hey, I'm serious. You need to think about it. You need to give some kind of answer for that. And then, so began a very long process, but
Yeah. Needless to say, it ended with him being there, and it obviously hurts. You know, it's different, but it's the right decision. But here also, just in the funny thing, and where that was put to the test, is I also had a sabbatical this last summer. And so how all this was unfolding, then there's 4 of us elders, Kate and I, and 2 others. And my sabbatical had been being planned for a year. It was already on the calendar. And then now the Lord is leading him out, and beginning in April, and then he moved in June. My sabbatical started in June. And so now this is put to the test. Now all the leadership of our church is now going from being carried, the leadership burden being carried by 4 men to now 2 men. And it's like, is this the right time? Should we be sending? Can we, no, we have to. And as elders are like, no, God has sustained us. He has clearly led us to this. We will be fine. And God was so kind all throughout the summer, even to those 2 brothers, that even when it was daunting or looked daunting, because it was so good, because there was this commitment, God just led our church, and it flourished, with both of us not being there. Well, I might say something about maybe we're, but it doesn't depend upon us, right?
yeah, the same
It's
thing, for vertical life.
Yeah.
And with Matt going out, the timing with which,
Yep.
from an earthly perspective, the timing with which that happened, and they were sent out to go plant might look crazy to some, but the Lord had provided,
Right.
and things were lined up and ready to go.
Yep.
And so we just can't hold those things so tightly.
Right.
And try to control it in a way that we expect all of these perfect things to just fall into place. If that's our perspective, then
Right.
I don't know that we're ever going to send anybody
Right.
anywhere.
Right. The most healthy thing for vertical life there could potentially be sending out a church plant. Which it seems crazy. Like you think from a business standpoint and all this stuff. Okay, they're down with hey, we're committing to plant this church, and then the lead pastor is no longer there, so now they're minus that, and now also we're sending out these people to go plant a church and all that. That just seems like that's a recipe for disaster, and yet. Even as we heard Dave speak of there and here now, no, it could actually be the healthiest thing for vertical life of new people being raised up, new opportunities, and here just a vision outside of the, some of maybe the problems or the things that are happening within the church to get their vision back on Christ, back on the mission, and that just comes from a commitment to sending away our best. Yeah.
Question for, what are some of the minimum criteria that you want to see in someone when you're thinking of identifying them as a planter or sending them out as a planter?
Yeah. Hey, that's a great question. Actually, I led a whole workshop on that yesterday. No, you're fine. It was just because that's a really, really big question. Yeah. Yeah. No. That's a really great. You're sending out your best. So church planters. Well, there's a whole process actually. Did you get? Where has it been? Back in my Bible. Did y'all see this? Did you get it in your thing? The whole profile and all that. And so some of that really comes out in the assessment. So if there's a guy that you're thinking, man, he's got, he has some potential, you should ask really 7 questions. Is he godly? Is his home healthy? Can he teach? Can he shepherd? Can he lead? Does he love the lost? And does he feel like family? Those are born out of, Dave Harvey wrote his book, Am I Called? But we have clarified that. And so in the assessment process, we take guys through that. And so there's a way as elders to be assessing those things in your church. Like he's shown initiative, he's shown drive, he can preach, people are following him. He's godly, he's known for his humility, his teachability. But people are eager to follow him. And so when those things are there and you guys are seeing that, then the GCC also has an assessment process for all that. And so I didn't say that earlier, but I serve the GCC also in leading our church planter assessments. And so we have one coming up in a couple weeks. We do one every quarter in various parts of the U.S., but also here in Canada and things. So, but those are the kind of questions that you're asking. So I can get you some of the notes with a larger profile to be thinking about in that regard.
If I heard that correctly, you're saying some of the material that Dave articulated in his book,
Mm-hmm.
which I've read, excellent book.
Yeah.
Some of that is translated.
Correct.
You kind of added to that.
So that whole content, yeah. So he's written the book, but also kind of in conjunction with that, we've built out a whole assessment tool and process. And so
And your church did that, or you're talking about GCC?
GCC, yeah. And we use it as a church, but yeah, that's a GCC thing. Yeah, yeah. So
So I have
that's,
access to the things.
yes, yeah. So yeah, so that's it's fantastic stuff, you know, for elder teams to be thinking through that, and then the GCC comes alongside that also and does a multi-day assessment, and then comes out with, you know, strategic things to grow in, you know, whether assessing readiness to plant and all that. But that's also then where that the residency kit comes in at, because oftentimes they're working through it, but man, they need some time in your church doing a residency, or they need some coaching along the way, and so there's some other tools being built out there. But
Yeah, hopefully your church got one, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully you guys went by the table
Yeah.
and got one of the kids, because
Yeah.
even like us, like I come on board 1 week later, we're sending out. Those plans have been made. Out he goes. Did
Yeah.
I get a residency kit while I'm here? You bet.
yeah,
Because
Yeah.
we're sending church,
Yeah.
right? We're going to do it again.
Yeah.
We're going to plant more than one church in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And so already beginning to just think about not only how do we
Yeah.
stay all linked up, but how do we do the next one?
Right.
And where's that going to be?
Right.
You
Right.
know, that's,
yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. We like Hill City can't be the last church that y'all plant. Living Hope can't be the last one that we plant. You know, by God's grace, it won't be. That's right. That's right. Matt's got to be building that into his core group and things. So you see the commitments here. There has to be a commitment to giving guys a shot, and a commitment to sending away your best. You know, and that you build those things into your culture by you know, helping deploy people to serve in their giftedness, both within your church and in your community, where it's less of a, hey, come do my thing, but how can we equip you to do your thing? What has God gifted you? What has God gifted you to be passionate in? And so you're sending out, you're sending, and you're leading through these things at every level, right? Because that's where your strategy comes into place. And so just number 3, like if you're going to be building this, you have to be praying about it. You have to be intentional in your leadership, but then you also need to have the strategy in order to be sending, right? And so there's that strategic opportunity, right? That comes really in all kinds of leadership. Man, we are going to be strategic in sending and multiplying at every level in our church, of equipping people to be evangelistic. We want people to be multiplying and talking about Jesus and multiplying themselves personally. But that also happens even in our church, how we go about multiplying our small groups. We talked about that even this week in our own church as we multiplied another small group. You know, and how we go do small groups and in our church, and this is where that culture is built out as we swell our small group leaders, and as our small groups and as new small group leaders are built, then that healthy small group is now splits and becomes 2. Not just, all right, we have this one over here, but now we have this one, and so let's just form a completely new one. No, we have one that's modeled it, that's seen it, and now they become 2. Or if it's really big and there's multiple leaders, they maybe become 3. And then they grow, and then another one. And so that's how you multiply then at that level. So multiplying individuals, we're multiplying small groups, we're multiplying in our ministries. And the same is true then also in our churches. As churches are being raised up and sent out with leaders and other people and other resources, that's the strategy in which it happens. And then you take, as elders, you see the opportunities that God provides, right? We can't just be so strategic and be like, well, we're planting over in this city, and then God opens up the door over here, be like, well, that's not in our strategy, you know. But if it's just so obvious, like, hey, here, then there needs to be the flexibility also to take the opportunities that God gives us, even if it doesn't, you know, it wasn't necessarily right on your target area. We had this happen in our church as we planted. So we're in New Braunfels. Radiant Church is on the north side of Austin, and so between us is about an hour. Okay, and in between us, in a city called Kyle, we had a handful of families making that 30-minute drive down to our church. And so as we brought on Ben as our resident, it's like, we're going to plant here. We're going to plant in, because it's kind of like right in the middle between our two churches. Incidentally, there were also several families from that area driving all the way across Austin, which that's bonkers to me. Like, who drives across the city? And and Austin, if you're unfamiliar, Austin, Texas, is the worst traffic in the world. Maybe that's overstating it, but it's a nightmare drive. But there are people driving up there. And so we're planning to plant in Kyle, then we have the church planter and all that, and so that's our target. But then as we're going, and then the Lord is working also in Radiant Church, about where many of their people are actually coming from the northern suburbs, and so they have an opportunity to move up to a new, nicer building up in that area, and so their elders are working, and so then an opportunity is actually presented to us to plant with them, but to move then the target area to South Austin, so a little bit farther from us, but there where there's more people more people from this core group and where they're coming from there. And so we had the strategy, hey, we want to plant between, but we also wanted to take the opportunity to then, we took the opportunity that God had presented us. So here's the school that's open, here's where people live, and now God is doing just a phenomenal work there. But you have to develop the strategy. Where are we going to plant? How are we going to do this in our church? How are we raising up people? And then multiply it out and take the opportunities that God gives us. And as these things are happening, then here's where that fourth point really comes in. How do we do this? Then we reinforce the values, right? What are our values? What have we said along the way? We set the tone, we lead through them, but then what are our values? Our commitments, right, to giving our best away, our commitments to giving people a shot. And this really then in our church then, as we took our elders get this, but then that needs to also be, filtered out into the people. And so doing book studies, like the books that I've talked about already. But here are two really key books that were are very influential in, I wanted to have them on the screen, didn't happen. Gaining by Losing by J.D. Greer. You familiar with that book? Fantastic, right? Gaining by Losing. We read that one early on, and it's like, J.D. Greer, Greer. Gaining by Losing. Her large Baptist church over in North Carolina planted countless churches. Well, somebody's probably counted. I don't know how many.
Oh, they've counted.
I'm sure they've counted it. They have all the numbers. But you want to talk about a book that lays out these values and will really instill this. That book is fantastic. The Trellis and the Vine by Colin Marshall and Tony Payne. Another book for just that sets a vision, particularly for elders, but within your church, of raising up and building healthy things. And the whole premise of the book, as you can think of, like, oftentimes elders either focus just on the trellis and have built all the processes and procedures and all the structure in the church, or churches just like focus on the vine and their gardener down there and they don't care about anything. And the whole thing, like, no, to actually have a healthy, flourishing church is you need to emphasize both. And that's how it grows. That's how things flourish, and that's how you raise up and stuff. And they're phenomenal books to reinforce these values, to get your people reading, not just as elders, but for sure amongst elders to be reading those books, or Stronger Together by Dave Harvey, a third one that's influential in this. But as you're reinforcing these things then with other key leaders, with other people, with those who are affected by this, or showing these signs to really get them thinking about this.
Yeah,
but
and don't wait.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason, there's no good reason to wait
Yeah.
to start leading your people in these
Right.
ways. Because here's what's going to happen is if you wait until the point that you're ready to launch a church to start talking about multiplying, you're way behind the game.
Yeah.
You're way behind. And
Yeah.
you'll be met with resistance and lots of questions and people who don't understand and possibly even heartache. So it has to be a part of your culture, a
Right.
part of your DNA
Right.
from the very beginning.
Right.
It begins with the elder team
Yep.
that then leads all those other people. So
Right.
start with this stuff
Right.
now.
Right. and you're reinforcing it through these books as you're going, so it is just a part of your culture, and you bring it up in your preaching, for you who, preaching pastors, you're just talking about this stuff all the time, because that's really where this final piece comes in, is you have to then celebrate the sending. So you're not only casting the vision for it, but then as it happens, you are celebrating it even in the pain. Even when you're teary-eyed there on the stage laying hands on to send them out, you're celebrating those who are taking the steps, whether it's, because it's a multiplication in the small group and you're there and it's hard because these relationships have been formed and now they're in two new groups, or it's the church plant and you're sending people away, or just even a few weeks ago we sent a family to Northern Ireland. Godly couple, tons of potential. I've even had the conversations about church planting with him, but he's in his young 30s and he just needs some further development. He needs some maturation. Been in ministry as a youth pastor and camp ministry, but really has some of the things like you're even also like assessing, like he has just that internal drive. A gifted leader, gifted teacher, but needs some more maturing. And so, all right, we're going to send you to Northern Ireland to go work with the Exodus International, which is a evangelism and discipleship ministry there amongst college students. Go do that. Go gain some ministry experience. And if God calls you to stay there forever, great. Or go there and be get mature, and then come back in a few years, and we'll talk about church planting then. Were there other opportunities? Could we have done that? Could we have done it within our own church? Possibly, yes. But this is something that they were called to, something that's a fantastic thing. And so we had to send them out. And as much as we hated to do it, we celebrated it. Painful. If it didn't hurt, that would actually indicate something was not good. If somebody chopped off your arm, would it hurt? Absolutely. And sometimes the sending feels like an arm chopped off, and yet it's good. It might be a little too violent of an illustration, but I think you get the picture. That's right. But then as it happens, it's celebrated. Culture, and this is as you're thinking of your influence in your church, culture is created by what you celebrate and what you tolerate. I don't know, Peter Drucker, I think, said that. I don't remember who's but culture is created within your church by what you celebrate and what you tolerate. You tolerate gossip, you tolerate complaining. Guess what kind of culture you're going to have in your church? You're going to have, grumbling, Israelite wandering in the wilderness type culture. But we don't tolerate that stuff, right? We want to celebrate godliness. We want to celebrate faithful going. We want to celebrate courage. We want to celebrate multiplication happening. And then not only in the sending and the going, but then also as God is at work amongst these things, we want to celebrate when there is multiplication happening at every level. But this happens even as baptisms are happening, as people are multiplying themselves, bringing people to faith. Like, we celebrate that. Hey, not only like Christ saved this person, but guess who he used? He used this sister in the workplace to bring, to be the mouthpiece. And so you're celebrating the multiplication. You're celebrating the small groups. You're celebrating this. And as you do that, you'll begin to see, I think, in your church, this become something that is just embraced, not only amongst your elders, but also amongst your people. And it's 6 years into this, it is a beautiful, though often gut-wrenching thing. So, yes, question. Let's take some questions. Yeah.
Sorry, if there's someone else.
Yep. No, take it away. Yep.
I think this is a question maybe for you, Kate. Were you a resident technically before you were sent, or is that an informal thing? And the question behind the question.
So here's the thing about Blair Cushman, is he's like training all the time, whether you know it or not. And so, no and yes.
Okay. Here's the question behind the question. What was the most what are the one or two most valuable things that you took away as a resident, whether you're a formal resident or not, that you would say the church or Blair or the elders or whatever?
So number one, man, is the repetition in establishing DNA culture for a group of people, right? We're forming as a brand new church, began as a core group, grown to over a couple hundred now, and works sticking to what we've said and doing it over and over and over until people just begin to breathe it. That's been one of the very important ones. A second one, would probably be just a determination and forward-thinking mindset, right? To be looking to the future. I'm not bent that way naturally, and that's something that I've had to learn. I'm more of a here and now kind of guy, and I want to deal with the here and now all the time, and sometimes not looking forward enough. And so I would say that that is a principle that I learned through the process of being trained, is to do the dreaming like he's talking about, and to think forward and to look forward to that. And it's helped me tremendously, and praise God, it's almost now become kind of a natural process for me, where used to I had to consciously think about that. But that'd be two. I mean, I could probably go on for a while.
I just had Cade with me in everything from the very get-go.
Yeah.
Like right from the very beginning. We launched our church October 1st, and a month later was the big Sutherland Springs Baptist Church shooting, which is just 30 miles down the road from us. And I remember that at one point. It was just, and Cade was working a secular job at that point and all that, and I was like, hey man, come with me. We've got a ministry opportunity. Go down, counsel victims, be there praying with people. Like, this is in our backyard, we have to be. And like right from there and other things, that was just a big thing. But it's just like, come on, let's go. We've got it to do. Come on and see this. And in other counseling, other things, leadership decisions, business meetings, all that, it just always alongside. You know, there's the formality of residencies and things, but there's just like, that's just a part of our church as well. Our leaders, you know, this is kind of just a cultural value of us, is like, whatever we do well, we never do alone. Always have somebody alongside you. And not to say like I'm really good at, you know, anything actually, but just don't have things. As my wife and I, we do premarital counseling, but we also have another couple alongside as we do premarital counseling. It's because it's marriage counseling for them, it's for us, and we're trying to raise up other people and get them going. As I do weddings, like we had 2 weddings on Saturday in our church, and I didn't have a thing to do with either of them, the officiating nor the premarital counseling. Just raised up and deployed other people to do that. Not even any of our staff people in either of those, our elders or our staff involved in either of those. This is just being raised up and sent out alongside. Yes, sir.
That's great. You kind of hinted towards like future plan, preview, partnership.
Yep.
Either what have you thought about what those partnerships may look like in a next plant, or what do you envision that kind of looking like in your scenario?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a unique thing going in Texas. So there's 6 of us churches. And all of us actually really are pretty connected. So, you know, either being planted out or whatever. But we, as the lead pastors, have monthly video call to pray and to strategize. We do man camp together. We just had that a couple weeks ago. All the men of our church do stuff. All of our ladies do things. We're doing student camp together. And so, from the lead pastors to our churches, do a lot together. And so we've just made commitments to planting churches together as a church already, you know, within our network and to various capacities, but and globally, like we support the church plant in Dublin, Ireland, altogether, and have in Mexico City and Haiti, things. So when one church has an opportunity or things, then you know, there's already like, hey, to some capacity, we're going to jump on board for that. But we also, you know, in some of our strategy meetings and things like that, like I said, we meet, it's like we have the map of Texas, and it's like, hey, we've got a bunch of people over here, like San Antonio now, where they're at. West San Antonio has a huge contingent of people. And so it's like, what we just need, we need the planter to get, you know, God to raise up another planter, and we've got guys, you know, at various places in the pipeline. None of us have a official resident at this point, but guys that are close, it's like, all right, we have to plant a church there. And
Kind of talking that monthly even?
Yeah. And it may not make it. It may not make the meeting every month, but yes, we're just talking about it all the time because it's just who we are.
Part of their DNA.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah. We're not the.
stuff
Yeah.
and want to plant.
Yeah.
And, you know, hold that
Right.
You know, and it's, all have the same vision to see more churches planted in the area.
Yeah.
And so as far as I want to go back to where you were talking about strategy.
Yeah.
And having to, in some degree, hold that loosely, because when you start talking about these collaborative efforts like this, that a lot of times just what God brings will help determine the strategy.
Sure.
Right? So
That's
if a
the
church
opportunity, yeah.
planter falls in the lap of one of these churches, okay, well then that piece now becomes
Right.
clearer,
Right.
and you start strategizing
Right.
based on that.
Right. This is exciting. Yeah. If we got a guy that's, and sometimes, you get those guys that come from the outside, or you developed a guy from, within your own church. And so, all right, it's exciting. Where are we sending him? Who are we sending him with? And how can we help? And and we all work together in that, like as we launched, all the other people on our launch Sunday sent other guys to come and, serve and be there. And, same thing as we planted Living Hope in South Austin, all the churches, have helped and served and come alongside, and even as Matt is going, lots of involvement and having him at our churches. So yeah, just lots of collaboration. And what's your context? Where are you at?
We're a plant out of Oakville here, 10
Okay.
years ago, about a half an hour from here.
Okay, which church?
From Mission City.
Okay, right on. Cool.
Used to be Harvest Brand.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. And so, because y'all here in the GTA have a pretty good relationship together as well, and all that. Yeah, there's some are yeah, right. And so,
No, it's a blessing.
right, and it is, and I think y'all share that same kind of collaboration and camaraderie like we do in Texas. And as Harvest was imploding back in the day, we actually joked as in Texas as GCC was still kind of getting formed, and we didn't even know. It's like, hey, if we don't know how all this is going to shake out like globally, but we have commitments to each other in Texas. The Canadian guys do, and we'll form a Texas-Canadian alliance if nobody else comes alongside. That's right. It's like let's do this together. That's right. It's like that's a great distance in between us, but we'll make it work. Yeah. And so, right. And so that's we talk, we pray, get on board, and all that. But it's a great question. Any other questions for anybody? No, that's it. Okay, well, man, we appreciate y'all's time. Thanks for coming in. I know we've got our break now and a session at 3:15. If you have questions you want to stick around for, Cade and I are happy to answer offline, or if you want to stay connected, or I can get you the planter profile stuff.
We're
If
good.
you'll get it.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks.
we can get that. But can I pray for us? God in heaven, thank you just for some moments to think about this noble work of church planting, the noble work of multiplying, God. But we also acknowledge that apart from you, we can do nothing. If we're not connected to you, Lord, if we're not abiding in you, then none of this is possible, Jesus. And so you build your church. You are the one who is glorified. You are you are the main attraction. And so we just we submit to you. We adore you. We make much of you, and we want our churches to do that. But we don't want that to just be happening in our one context, God. We want to be useful to you to see more churches planted, God, in this city and the cities around us, God. And so start that in us, Lord. You've given the elders of the church a noble task, and we can't do it in our own strength. Who are we? What is our house that you would bring us to this? Like, God, we would be fooling ourselves to think that we have the strategy, that we have the resources. And so we just want to follow you in this and watch you and be amazed at your awesomeness. And so God bless my brothers as they put their hand to the plow, as they take something from what we've talked about here. God, if it would bring you glory, then we want to be about it. If it would do anything to distract from that, then cause us to forget it or to just simply not do it, Lord. So we trust you. We love you. We pray in Christ's name. Amen. Amen. Thank you, guys.
Glad to hear you guys are
30 minutes.
Maybe he's very scheduled.
see you. Glad you're here. That was an actual added bonus. I'll
Yeah.
be right here and stuff.
You're never too late to, begin preparing for work. You're never too early.
Okay, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Yeah. Blair, thank you.
Yes, sir. Tell me your name.
My name's Chris. Chris Dias, yeah.
What's your role?
I'm here at, in Oakville.
Okay. At Hope,
Yeah.
right here.